Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Time for a little Mike in the Midwest. We're going to talk Silver Dollar City. It wasn't Disney, and I have thoughts. Let's do it. And I have a new intro. Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome to episode number 52 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Thank you so much for your support of the show. I can't say that enough. It does mean a lot. It helps us keep everything rolling. It's been a great journey, and I appreciate you hanging in there with us here on Patreon, supporting the show. You're putting smiles on people's faces all around the world because I get feedback almost daily from folks that listen around the United States and outside of the United States saying that they enjoy the show. They love the memories, especially our guests who come on Mondays and share their trips. And then Wednesdays and Fridays, we try to give some news and some planning tips, as we can, but also to share some laughs along the way. And I've really enjoyed doing this show for over 13 years, and I hope that you've enjoyed listening to it. You've taken us on walks, runs, doing the dishes, sweeping the floor in the kitchen, maybe cutting the grass, whatever it is. Thank you so much for putting us in that playlist. That is that's a spot that we never take for granted. I know that there are tons and tons of podcasts out there, and limited amount of time to listen to the shows. So thank you for making ours a part of your rotation. And especially thank you so much for your support here on Patreon. It does mean a lot. All right. Today we are going to hop into my thoughts on our trip last weekend to Branson, Missouri, which I had never been there before in my life. And I'm 47 and have lived in Missouri my whole life. Everybody's like, you have not been to Branson? No, I hadn't. So we'll talk about that. There's a lot of connections to Disney too with Silver Dollar City. But before we do that, let's get the feedback from last week's show. Of course, last week I was talking about that it was my 15th wedding anniversary last Thursday, the day we recorded the show. So I talked about how Pam and I met and kind of our little love story and how we have been together for the last 15 years and how honestly I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I'm married way out of my league. Pam is so awesome. She's a great mother. She's a great wife. She's just a great friend to everybody. And, you gotta appreciate that when you have it. I have a beautiful, awesome, wonderful wife, and I've just been lucky for the last 15 years. And now it's been 15 years and 1 week. She's still with me. She put up with me down at Silver Dollar City, which was a lot. So let's get the feedback from last week's show. Then we'll jump into my thoughts on Silver Dollar City. Kathy Melchin, thank you so much for being a patron. She says, great episode. I loved hearing about how you and Pam got together. I'm usually driving home from work when I listen and never remember to comment when I get home. Got out early today. Last week's episode was great too, but I have no recollections of the single cassette tapes. Whoa, wait, you don't have any recollections of the Cassingles? I call them Cassingles. She says, I'm about 7 years older than you, but you definitely bought tapes during that time period. I actually worked with a friend from high school. I'm going to have to ask her if she remembers them. Happy anniversary to you and Pam and enjoy your trip. Well, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, just Google it. Cassette singles. They were the hottest thing. I'm trying to guess like what time period that would have been. I would guess if I had to put a year on it, maybe like the mid to late 80s, maybe like 86, 87, 88. Because I remember buying a lot of cassette singles at that time. Now, of course, that was when I had hardly any money because I was just starting to work at the skating rink when I was 14. And so a cassette single was right up my alley because it was like $2. Wasn't much. Megan Green, our mother of triplets. Megan, what's going on? Thanks for being a patron. What a great story for a great couple. Thank you for sharing it. And I hope you guys have an awesome anniversary trip. Happy anniversary. We did. Thank you so much, Megan. Josh Bennett. Josh, thanks for being a patron. I sure appreciate it. He says, we also got married at a Southern plantation, Nottoway Plantation, along the Mississippi River in Southern Louisiana. Our wedding was outdoors under oak trees. Fortunately, we had perfect weather for the day. Hey, it's almost like us, except we had a terrible thunderstorm come through right after the wedding ceremony and right at the beginning of the reception in the barn. But the power went out. We had a backup generator, came back on. We danced. We had the DJ. Everything went fine, except for Ricky's parents' Corvette that got crushed by a tree that got struck by lightning. So that's how that went. All right, my good friend Michelle Camber down in Boynton Beach, Florida, Southern Florida. Hope you're doing well down there. I've seen some pictures down at Walt Disney World, you and your daughter, and I can't believe how old we are getting because our kids are getting so old. But she is beautiful and a great young woman, it looks like. So, Michelle, thank you for being a patron. She says, getting caught up and wanted to wish you and Pam a belated happy anniversary. Really enjoyed hearing your love story. Thanks, Michelle. Also, just listened to the music episode and had to respond. When I got my first job at 14, I took my first paycheck and bought my first cassette that was all mine. It was Olivia Newton-John's Physical. I love that album. And I remember being so excited. It was right around the time that I joined the Columbia Music Club or whatever it was called, where you got to pick 10 cassettes for a penny that agreed to buy a certain number more over time at full price. I totally remember there was the Columbia Music Club and there was another one. There were like two of them at least. And that's right. You would get those ads everywhere. 10 albums for a penny. And then you had to, maybe get like 10 more over the next 2 years at full price, like 17, 18 bucks. I never did it because my parents were always super skeptical of things like that. Like we didn't even have credit cards in our house when I was growing up. So that was, kind of one of those things that it was not going to happen for me, but I always got the ads and I always wanted to do it. Now I did have friends that did it. And I kind of, my good friend Ryan in middle school, he did it. And I remember we were picking out the albums, right? The 10 for the penny. And I thought the best way to get the biggest bang for your buck was that they had a lot of greatest hit albums. And so we got, like Aerosmith's greatest hits or, what have you, we got tons of Journey's greatest hits, all the greatest hits, because I felt like that way you're not spending money on dud songs. Most of them you're going to know. And also not just greatest hits albums like by one artist, but like compilations. So those were always fun. So that's what he did a lot. She says also, your CD Walkman story made me laugh with all the skipping over the slightest bump. In 1992, I was driving home from college in Michigan, all the way to Florida, all the way by myself. So I decided to treat myself to a player for the long ride. And I only had money for one CD, the Pretty Woman soundtrack. Great topic. It must have been love, but it's over now. Right, Roxette? That's on that album. I remember because I used to play that at the skating rink. Yes, Michelle, bringing back memories to me. I love our community. This show, I try to give you some memories, just stuff I did that hopefully will bring back memories that you had. But you guys, when you give the feedback, you bounce it right back to me. I remember that Pretty Woman soundtrack. Oh my gosh. Just the movie Pretty Woman. Was that not like a cultural phenomenon? And also, Michelle mentioned the Physical album by Olivia Newton-John. I think that had like Xanadu on it. I think it had, oh my gosh, what are the other songs on there? Make a Move on Me or something like that. Oh, yeah, that album was hot because I remember that we had, back in the day, it was on cable or something, one of the Olivia Newton-John concerts for Physical, and my dad or my mom taped it onto a VHS tape. And we used to watch that all the time. It was so popular. I just remember singing Xanadu. Oh, good memories, Michelle. Thank you so much for that. All right, that's the feedback. If you have feedback for today's show or any of the previous shows, just visit patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Drop it in, and it will be featured, I promise you, on next week's episode. All right, today, let's hop into what I kind of talked about, what I was getting ready to do last Thursday, was that the gift for my wife. Now, I will be honest. My wife really has been hinting since our 10th anniversary that she wants to go to Hawaii. We've never been to Hawaii. I do want to go to Hawaii. Shout out George. I want to get out there because I'm all about the Polynesian culture. I love the Polynesian resort at Walt Disney World. When I was a teacher, I always showed the movie Kon-Tiki, which was about, the Polynesian culture and how folks might have migrated from South America to the Polynesian islands and back. I just love all about it, but I've never been to Hawaii. So she's been, hinting about that, and I want to do that for her. So maybe at 20 years, we'll get out to Hawaii or something. But, this year it was just the financial stuff wasn't there really. And there was still a lot of questions about quarantining when you got there, testing, stuff like that. So I wanted to give her a trip, but something that was a little bit more reasonable, but something neither one of us had ever done. And it's kind of strange that neither one of us had ever been to Branson, because it would be like somebody living in Tennessee never being to Pigeon Forge or Dollywood, somebody being like in Appalachia, Northern Alabama or Mississippi or something. Everybody here goes to Branson a lot. I mean, that you hear about it a ton from folks in St. Louis, because when you really can't travel, folks that aren't lucky enough to get to go to places like Walt Disney World or go on cruises, just your real blue collar people that are in my area of St. Louis, their big vacation was always Branson. And so, I always heard about it. And of course, there's lots of commercials in St. Louis marketing Branson to folks that live in St. Louis because we're a big market within driving distance. In all the commercials, what you see is go-karts, helicopter rides, country music shows. You see a lot of buffets in the commercials. There's a casino, I think. It's all that touristy stuff. There's a big Ferris wheel. So anyway, I had seen all this stuff my whole life in the commercials. And of course, Silver Dollar City, which is the theme park that's down in Branson, right outside of Branson. And so I was like, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for a weekend. So, and the thing was, my wife does not like surprises. Don't surprise her. If you see her at Walt Disney World here in July, if you're down there at the same time, she doesn't like surprises. However, on my first Father's Day, after Mallory was born in January. So Father's Day, 6 months later in June, Pam woke me up that morning of Father's Day. And she said, or no, she woke me up the Saturday before Father's Day and said, pack your bags. I was like, what? She says, we're going on a mystery trip. I was like, what, right now? She's like, yep, right now. Pack your bags. I was like, what about Mallory? She's only 6 months old. We can't leave her. My parents are going to watch her. It's all good. We're going on a trip for your first, Father's Day with Mallory. So, okay. So she surprised me. I roll with anything. I'm fine. You can surprise me. You want to surprise me at Walt Disney World? Hey, do it. I like it. I'm fine. So she's like, we're going to Marceline. And the thing was, I had talked about Marceline, in passing. I just said, that'd be a cool place to go. I had gotten a couple of, books and stuff and read up about it. She's like, we're going to Marceline. I've booked the bed and breakfast. It's in the old Uptown Theater where Walt Disney premiered a movie back in the 50s. It's got his schoolhouse. We're going to go on the tour of the Walt Disney World Museum, or the Walt Disney Museum in Marceline. We're going to go up and down. It was awesome. She surprised me. It was an amazing weekend. I rolled with it. We had a great time going all over Marceline. Loved it. Now, again, my wife's not big on surprises, but I wanted to return the favor, right? I wanted to surprise her. So Thursday morning last week, we get up in the morning, it's our anniversary before I recorded Mike in the Midwest. And, we exchange cards and gifts and so forth. And I told her, I'm like, pack your bags. She's like, wait, what? I was, here's the thing though, right? She's been wanting to go to Hawaii. So I was kind of scared to say this because I was worried she'd be disappointed, right? Or pack your bags, we're going to Hawaii. Well, we weren't. She knew. So I told her, we're going to Branson, we're going to Silver Dollar City. And she was a trooper. She's like, that sounds fun. When are we going? I'm like, tomorrow. So we left on Friday morning and we drove down. Now, Branson's an easy drive from St. Louis. It's about 3.5, 4 hours. Not bad. You just drive down towards Springfield, down Interstate 44, about 30 miles south of Springfield to get into Branson. Now, let me tell you about Branson. Branson's your tourist trap city that's been there for decades and decades. Putt-putt, like I said, putt-putt, country shows where they, country singers, magicians, go-karts, Ferris wheels, helicopter rides, all that, and all the stores that have the tie-dye shirts and all that junk. So we get down there and I'm like, this is cool. Right. I mean, it's kind of like I drive down at Walt Disney World. It's like the stuff where you really don't want to go over there because like Walt Disney World's so pristine. You don't want to leave the bubble. Yeah. This is like what's on the outside of the bubble. That's Branson. There's a Ripley's, believe it or not. There's a Titanic museum. There's an aquarium. I'm trying to think what else. But so we did all that stuff. And that part of Branson was fun just to see as a tourist thing. We went in all the stores, we bought some sodas, little snacky things, taffy, stuff like that. But then we heard, I've been talking with a couple of our listeners, especially Matt Parrish, who lives in Springfield from 3028 and Wedaway Radio. And he was giving me tips about this previous to letting Pam know we were going down. So he's like, a couple things you got to do. You got to go to the landing. Okay, so in St. Louis, we have a place called the Landing. It's called the Cleves Landing, and you'll get killed if you go down there. It's a dangerous place nowadays. It used to be cool in the 80s. So I was like, okay. So the thing is, we had a hotel right on the main drag through Old Branson, and so we could go right or left. We were right in the middle of the action. So we got there, we went right. We saw all that touristy stuff that I've already mentioned. Well, I was like, well, I wonder what's down there left, because on the map, it looks like we're kind of halfway between all the attractions. So we go left, and that takes us down to the Landing, which Matt talked about. Now, the landing basically had two parts. It had an old part of it with, it had like a general store. It had an old soda fountain, ice cream shop, uh, stuff to buy, a store that has like stuff you'd wear at the lake, like shower shoes, hats, sunscreen, stuff like that. But then when you got way down by the water, that's where they had really developed this new place called The Landing. And what it was, I am not kidding, it was Disney Springs. It was exactly Disney Springs almost. It had a fountain show with, the choreographed music. They had a stage with a live band playing. They had a Margaritaville restaurant. It was called Land Shark. Jimmy Buffett restaurant, margaritas, cheeseburger in paradise, fries, all kinds of stuff. Now that's where I got the nachos that I put on my Instagram. They had now it wasn't Splitsville, but they had a bowling alley with fine food and drinks. So sit down dining inside of a big old bowling alley, gigantic. And so that was like Splitsville. They had a shop called Ride Makers, and this was actually in Disney Springs back when they did the refurb, right, for a while there, where you can make like a remote control car customized. That used to be at Disney Springs. That was at the Landing. And you just had a bunch of big restaurants. You had a Bass Pro Shop, which is big around here. It was exactly laid out like Disney Springs. It was so bizarre. Like the whole time we're walking, there's a movie theater. There were some like rides. We did zip line. Mallory and I zip lined over the lake. That was kind of cool. That's on my Instagram too. You can see that video. It was a little bit scary. Mallory was kind of freaked out. I was trying to be the, strong dad and not scare her. But we had a good time zip lining across the lake. But yeah, if you ever go to Branson, the area you want to go to and the area you want to stay, there's a Hilton down there. So if you ever want to go to Branson, you want to be in the fancy part of Branson, stay at the Landing. There's a Hilton right on the Landing, and it's just like staying at Disney Springs. Lots of shopping, lots of eating, lots of snacks. You'll love it. Okay, so we did that the first night because I didn't buy tickets for Friday. Saturday and Sunday, we had tickets to Silver Dollar City. So Silver Dollar City is on the other side of the Ozark Mountain that we're staying on. So you got to go kind of up and over. Not a huge mountain. It's an Ozark Mountain. I looked at the elevation. I think we're at like 1,200 feet. So we get over to Silver Dollar City, and I have no idea what's going on, right? I have it on the map. I've looked a little bit. I downloaded their app, but I wanted to go in blind because I've talked about this on the podcast that there's something about your first trip to Disney that you'll never get to do again. Where behind everywhere you go, everything is new. If you want to ride that, that's new. You've never seen that show. You've never eaten in that restaurant. You've never had that snack. That's like a joyful thing that a lot of us don't have anymore because we've gone so many times. We love it, but you don't get that discovery again. Now, Silver Dollar City, I knew that I was going to have that, and I was excited for that. So was Pam. And we also brought Mallory, by the way, because, she wanted to go. So we're good parents. We brought Mallory. So anyway, we get over to Silver Dollar City, and of course, I use my best Disney trip planning tips, right? It opens at 9:30. What time do we get there? We get there at 8:30 because I just want to be ready, right? I want to roll. We drive up to Silver Dollar City, and there's two lanes. There's the lane for the free parking, and there's lane for preferred parking where you can pay to park. So guess which lane I took? You're right, free parking. We were there super early, though, so I got a really sweet spot in the free parking. You go over, and you get under this, covered little shelter thing, and the tram pulls up. Now this tram is not a Disney tram, and they don't even look the same. There's like all kinds of vehicles that'll pick you up on the tram. Some are for tractors, some are buses, some are like church vans. We got in more of a traditional tram, and they drive you up to Silver Dollar City, up to the entrance. And the first thing when we got up to the entrance, I noticed was, man, this entrance is gorgeous. I mean, the theming on these buildings and the sign that says Silver Dollar City, it looks like you're going into an old Western town. Like it is immaculately painted. Everything looks amazing. This is before we went through the gates. So we, get there. I have my tickets on my phone, the barcodes and so forth. Go through the, security scanners, no problem. Show them my phone. They scan, boop, boop, boop. Okay. And we go right in. First place we come to it's like a little house. Here's the thing about Silver Dollar City too, just kind of in general. There are so many distinct buildings in this park. So it's not like at Walt Disney World, you might have one big building that has like 3 or 4 facades for different things in front of it. No, these are actually almost all standalone little buildings that are so cutely decorated. So as soon as we went in, we were hungry because we hadn't had breakfast yet. I'd run on the treadmill. I was starving. And I had heard and I had seen on the app that they have awesome cinnamon rolls. So I'm like, oh yeah, man, we're in the Southern Missouri, cinnamon rolls, they got to be good. But I also need protein in the morning because I get hangry later if I don't have protein. So anyway, we go into this place. Oh my gosh, it's like Sleepy Hollow, but you can actually go in the building. You see all the people in the back making the cinnamon rolls, making all the baked goods. They're all happy. They're talking to the guests. They have a big, glass case. You can pick out what you want. You see the guy bring the cinnamon roll tray out with all these cinnamon rolls on it. He's so proud of me, showing them to everybody in line. It smells so good. So we get these cinnamon rolls to start the day. We did this both Saturday and Sunday. But they also had a thing that kind of like a pig in a blanket. It was a link of sausage with like a biscuit around it. Oh, that's what I had too. I had a cinnamon roll and one of those things. Beautiful way to start the day. So this is before we actually even get into we're inside the gates, but we haven't even got to Main Street USA at Walt Disney World. So we get our breakfast, we sit outside, we enjoy it, we watch everybody rush by. It was amazing. Now, one of my Michael Luckman, who's a listener of the podcast, he's a dentist here in St. Louis. He actually won a Disney trip from the Magic for Less out of the Give Kids the World live show a few years back. He said, and so did Matt Parrish. They said, if they're doing the cave tours, you got to do a cave tour. So I'm thinking, okay, I don't know. You said if there's a cave tour, you got to do a cave tour. So we get up to the first place, and it's called the Hospitality House. The equivalent at Walt Disney World would be like the Emporium. It's a big store. But on the right, as you come into the Hospitality House, I saw on my right, it said cave tours every 2 hours today. And the first one was leaving at 9:45, and it was just about 9:40 at this time. So I asked my wife, I'm like, go find out the deal on these cave tours. Like, how much do they cost? What do you got to do? So she goes up and asks the guy, how do we do this cave tour? Like, where do we sign up? Which is there any availability left for today? How much extra is it? This is where it's different than Disney. He's like, just go over there. We're leaving in 5 minutes, no extra cost. And I was like, yeah, because this is my thing. I love science. I love geology. I love that kind of stuff. And I didn't know if it was going to be a 5-minute cave tour, whatever. We go. So the first thing is and there's a picture on my Instagram. You gotta crawl through this cutout thing to even get through to where you go on the tour. Because the reason is that there's small little areas that you have to duck down and crawl through in the cave. And so you got to be able to fit through this little cutout so that that you can do that inside the cave itself. So I'm like, whoa, this is for real. Because I'm a tall guy. It was little. So I sneak through there. Mallory and Pam sneak through there. And Pam's like, what are we getting ourselves into? So we go down there. They tell us it's called Marvel Cave. They tell us it's an hour-long tour. They tell you they're bringing a defibrillator in case anybody, has heart issues down in the cave. And, you got to be able to go down 500 feet. You're going to be walking for about a mile. It's going to be damp. It's going to be wet. It's going to be slick. There might be bats. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. My wife and Mallory were kind of looking at me like, let's go ride a roller coaster. Now I was like, this is great. And I was like, this is at a theme park. This is great. This is what I came for. So anyway, they give us all the rules and the regulations. They tell us at the end, because we're going to be way down low, there's a train that actually pulls us out of the cave. It pulls us up the side of the cave. And they say sometimes it doesn't work. So be ready to, at the bottom, we're going to go down, 600-700 steps. But if that train isn't operating, which it doesn't always operate, we got to turn around. We got to hoof it back up 600 or 700 steps. So be prepared for that. That's when my wife was shooting me looks. Anyway, we go down there. It was awesome. I don't know if you've ever been in a big cave. Missouri's the cave state. Speaking of Mike in the Midwest, I've been to Merrimack Caverns, which is another big cave attraction in Missouri. This was better. We go into this big room, the cathedral room, and they point out things, and we go into, further in, and you have different rooms. You see stalactites, stalagmites, you hear the water, and it's like 60 degrees down there. It was hot out upstairs, in the normal part of the theme park. It was amazing. And the whole thing I kept telling Pam was, this is real. This isn't like Imagineer. This is a real cave that the Osage tribe that lived in southwestern Missouri, they were in this cave in the 1500s. Like, think of the history, the folks that have explored this cave. She's not into that. I was like, this is amazing. Like, could you imagine how cool this would have been in the 1500s to have a place like this and to explore? So anyway, we go in there. There's a train, an incline train that pulls us out at the end. We get to the top. Pam's excited that we're out of there. I'm like, man, we haven't even got into the theme park yet. And I've already gone on this hour-long cave tour led by this ranger. It was amazing. I loved it. So anyway, we go into Silver Dollar City. And to not make this too long, I'm just going to give some of the highlights. This park, again, I didn't know what to expect because I am a person who I go to Walt Disney World way more than I go to Six Flags. Six Flags is now 30 minutes from my house, and I've been there once in the last 3 years just because Mallory wanted to go for a day with a friend. So we went out there one time in the last 3 years. We've been to Six Flags, and Six Flags is fine. I grew up there. And when I was a kid, Six Flags was the ultimate like vacation for us because we didn't go out of town. We didn't go on vacation, but we would go occasionally go to Six Flags. And it was great because you had rides like the log ride, you had Thunder River, you had the Screaming Eagle, you had roller coasters, you had water rides, you had spinny rides, you had all kinds of stuff. Like I loved going to Six Flags, the funnel cakes and so forth. So I was kind of like, I'm a Disney, let's face it, a lot of us are Disney snobs. We love Disney. We love the way Disney does things. So going into Silver Dollar City, I wanted to love it, but I was also scared that I would get kind of the feeling that I have for Six Flags and be like, well, eh, it was okay, but it wasn't how Disney does it. Because that's what I say at Six Flags. I try not to, but every time I go to Six Flags, that's what happens. Silver Dollar City was absolutely not that way. I will tell you this park, and a lot of people, I've never been to Dollywood, but what I've been getting from the comments on my pictures and so forth, a lot of people say, oh, that is just like Dollywood in, I believe, Pigeon Forge. So you go in, and first of all, it's not as frantic as Walt Disney World. It's smaller. There's only one park. And like you can buy a fast pass equivalent. I didn't, and I thought I would buy it later if we never needed it. And I only saw a few people using it both days because the crowds were not bad. There was never a long line more than an hour. In most attractions, you're talking 10, 15 minutes. It was not bad. But the thing is, when I went in, here's some of my takeaways. The theming might have been better than the Magic Kingdom. And that's saying a lot. The Magic Kingdom theming is over the top. But this park nails it on the theme. And of course, the theme is Matt Parrish had this conversation with me via Twitter the whole time I was there. We were talking back and forth. This is kind of his backyard here. And he called Silver Dollar City, it's a gigantic frontier land. And that is exactly what it was. He said that on Sunday. And after I'd been there for a day and a half at this point, I was like, that is exactly the description of Silver Dollar City. It is a gigantic frontier land because it's all about in Silver Dollar City, besides the attractions, the restaurants, the snacks, the shows, what really made it special was that they had a lot of artisans demonstrating their crafts. And it wasn't just for like a window of an hour. It was like all day. So you would have a blacksmith in like a blacksmith shop where they would demonstrate how they make, stuff out of metal, horseshoes and, signs you could make it, you take home, you could buy and take home to your house. There was a glass blowing team and they had a whole stage with like 3 or 4 different furnaces. And they were not just making like, little ornaments. They made this gigantic like chandelier thing. And they talked about the process, how it works. It was very, very educational, very Disney, because you got to kind of see how things have been done over the past, centuries. But it was exciting at the same time. Mallory, she's a 13-year-old girl. She was enthralled. And that says something. She was not on her phone. And I was told that's my jam. Like I was loving it. You go into the taffy shop. It's not just that you buy taffy. They're making the taffy on the machine in front of you and they'll explain everything that's going on. Same with the fudge. They're making the fudge right in front of you. It's a show. And so, tin workers, there were people working, making baseball bats out of, on lathes. They were, they customize it for you. The whole thing was, it was a demonstration of these skills that I think a lot of the things have become, automated at this point, but these folks were proud that it was their heritage. And also, speaking of the folks who work there that were amazing, I love our cast members. They're amazing. And the greatest compliment I can give to the folks at Silver Dollar City, they were just like cast members at Walt Disney World. Now, the one thing I noticed was almost every person that worked at Silver Dollar City was older. And I'm 40, older than me. I'm talking like 60s or 70s. And the thing was too, everybody that worked there, I noticed they loved the place. They loved it like it was theirs. Like it belonged to their grandparents. They wanted you to fall in love with Silver Dollar City. They wanted you to have a great time today. They were always so, so very kind. Because we were asking a lot of folks like, hey, where's this? Where's that? When do we do this? And they were just like they just wanted to like come with, come on, let me show you my favorite. This is my park. And it really felt comfortable. I was super happy about that. Another thing I want to point out, we did a train ride. They have a train ride, just like Walt Disney World, steam train, and you get on. But the thing was, I thought we'd ride the train around the park, and that's what it would be. No. This is kind of a long train ride too, and it stops halfway, and you get robbed. Okay, so like all of a sudden it stops. This robber comes out of the woods, and he tells some jokes, and then he robs the train. Then, of course, our conductor, who was on the back of the train, who's given the auditory spiel while we're going through the woods and what's here, that's a roller coaster, that's that. She comes out, she has a gun, she shoots the robber in the butt. I was like, they couldn't do this at Walt Disney World. This is like so like a long time ago, but it was so funny. I loved it, because it was like a comedy routine. She had a pop gun, she shot him, he was hiding behind a tree, hit him in the butt. So funny. So it was even a little more than I was expecting. Like at Walt Disney World, I love the train, but this was a train ride and a show. And I will tell you, speaking of the rides down there too, the rides at Silver Dollar City are pretty incredible. Now Mallory wasn't really into riding a lot of roller coasters, either is my wife. So I didn't ride a whole bunch of them. Maybe we will, because we're definitely going to go back if you can't tell. But we did ride. Everybody said you have to do the cave, which Marvel Cave was awesome. That's exactly, you got to do the cave if you go down. But everybody else said you got to ride Time Traveler. Now, Time Traveler is a roller coaster that I did research. It has been voted in the top 5 roller coasters anywhere in the United States. Top 5 roller coaster. It's ahead of any Disney roller coaster. There's no Disney roller coaster, any park, anywhere that's above Time Traveler on these lists that I looked at. And so I was, well, okay, fine. So it was the first thing that Mallory and I rode. Pam was like, nope, I'm out. So Time Traveler, what it does, you get in a car, and the best way I can describe it, it's kind of like Toy Story Midway Mania, where you're sitting in pairs and you're back to back. Like Mallory and I have back to back with another, couple, but you don't see each other. You got a divider between the two, but you're looking across at another couple, like you're looking at them. And the thing is, you kind of spin on the car while you're on this super fast 5 inversion steel roller coaster with an 80-foot drop straight down out of the station. It was insane. It messed me up for the rest of the day. I didn't want to ride anything that spun. I didn't want to do any more coasters, but it was pretty cool. So that's pretty good advice. If you ever go to Silver Dollar City, give Time Traveler a shot, but it is crazy. We also did one of their old Mine Train roller coasters. It was their very first coaster called Thunderation. That thing was so rough, I thought my teeth were going to pop out of my head. Oh my gosh, it was brutal, but it was fun at the same time, because it was like an old 70s steel roller coaster. And when you turned, it would jerk so hard like they used to. But yeah, that made Space Mountain feel like it was rock and roller coaster. It was crazy. What else? We got to see the Harlem Globetrotters. They had a demonstration team down there, right? In their big, theater. That was awesome. We went in there, hadn't seen them in years. And that was always a great show. It was so great. It was sold out every showing. It was great. We loved seeing them. They also have a ride called Mystic River Falls. And it's the equivalent of a Cali River Rapids at Animal Kingdom, right? It's the family raft ride. Everybody sits in a circular raft. It holds about 10 people or so. We got in there with another family, and you're laughing and stuff. But the thing was, and you can look up these rides on there. The Silver Dollar City has an app, which has wait times, just like Disney and all that stuff, maps. But Mystic River Falls is a pretty interesting ride because, of course, all these family raft rides, you get in them, they put you out on like a river, and you go through a bunch of rapids, you hit rocks, you kind of spin around and so forth. Well, we did all that, which was a ton of fun. And I love those kind of rides. Thunder River growing up at Six Flags was one of those rides. But at the end of this ride, you get like the whole raft gets put onto this gigantic elevator, and it lifts you up 80 feet. It takes you straight up on this tower. And then you go down this big tube on the raft and go down a big, I think it's the biggest drop in the United States as far as raft rides. And that's how it ends. So it was like, again, it was like Cali River Rapids, but then it had the bonus of at the end, you go up this 80-foot elevator through these slicky tubes down this hill, and that's where you have the big finish. It was an amazing attraction. We got soaked. My shoes may still be wet from that one. So, and the snacks were great. They had a lot of think fair food from county fairs, stuff like that. They were called like tater somethings, you would have basically a stick with a big hot dog on it. And inside that they would have potatoes that they had flash fried. So they kind of became like potato chips. But when you ate them hot, they weren't as crunchy as a potato chip. Uh, Lots of skillets where you could have stuff mixed up in skillets to eat, corn dogs, hot dogs. I'm trying to think what else we had. We had all kinds of stuff. We had cookies, we had a funnel cake, we had fudge. Just it's just really, down home kind of southern type food, and it was really good. So when I went down there, I really didn't know what to expect. And I really was scared that I would be a Disney snob and be like, it's not Space Mountain, or it's not Sleepy Hollow. I would, they're trying, they're getting close, but they're not Walt Disney World. And what I found out was, and this is where we can learn about ourselves and maybe grow as people. I fell in love with Silver Dollar City. And it's kind of strange because it's not the Disney experience. It's not the bubble. We stayed in a hotel 7 miles away on the other side of the mountain there in Old Branson. So we couldn't go back to the hotel rest. We stayed in the park from opening till closing, but it was awesome. The thing was, it felt so comfortable. It was like Frontierland, the whole park. But the folks who worked there were so kind. They were very good at what they did. They were always asking if you're having a good time, hey, it was very interactive. And also it was, the theming was over the top. I mean, everything looked immaculately painted. The colors popped. And the thing is too about this park, it is very much just built right into the Ozark Mountains. There are trees everywhere inside this park. It was shaded almost everywhere. So it was a hot weekend, but you were almost always walking in the shade, which I was like, this is so great, because at Disney, you're typically walking out in the open in the sun, and it was shady almost everywhere. And because of that, there's actually a part of the park called Hill Street. And I mean to tell you, it is built on a hill, and it is a big, long, steep hill that I saw people struggling to push other folks in wheelchairs up and down that hill. But I mean, it's just how it is. It was, the park was made in 1960. It's built on the side of a mountain. And you just made sure that if you had to go over to Hill Street to do those rides or to eat something over there, you paid attention as you went down the hill to like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it while we're here, so we don't keep going up and down Hill Street. I kept telling Mallory and Pam I have the Hill Street blues because my legs were hurting. So anyway, that's a quick look at Silver Dollar City. Would I recommend it to anybody? Absolutely. Especially if you're anywhere in the Mid-South, Midwest, Oklahoma, Texas. We saw license, and this surprised me. I thought it was just a Missouri thing. In the parking lot, we saw Mississippi license plates. We saw Michigan license plates. Of course, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas. We saw Iowa. We saw Illinois, Tennessee. We saw Kentucky. We saw, folks came from all over the place. And you can make an amazing weekend out of Silver Dollar City and some of the just little stuff at the landing at Branson. So surprising to me, I didn't know, but hey, I broadened my horizons a little bit. It's always Disney for me, but I stepped out of my comfort zone and I liked it. It was a really neat experience. I can imagine it's really cool down at Halloween. They do a Halloween thing. They do Christmas. And so I think we're going to be back to talk more about this when those things happen. But hey, step outside your comfort zone and try. We all love Disney. And I always feel like I'm cheating on Disney, but it was okay because I knew I was going to Disney in a few weeks anyway. This was just a couple of days to have a distraction to celebrate our anniversary more immediately. And it was a great time. So if you ever get a chance to go to Silver Dollar City, do it. And then let me know what you think. If you've ever been there, leave some feedback. Mike in the Midwest over at the Patreon page. Let me know. And if you've ever been to Dollywood, let me know what I said. Did it line up with what you have experienced at Dollywood? What's the same? What's different? Let's get a lot of feedback going for next week's show. But thank you so much for hanging with me here on a Thursday. Hope you are doing great. I sure appreciate you being a patron of the show, and we'll be back again next Thursday. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Bye, everybody.